Continuamos y lo hacemos con el bloque ya de clausura del Observatorio de la Movilidad de este año y lo hacemos con una visión internacional que nos va a permitir, al igual que el año pasado, comprobar cómo se está viendo toda esta revolución del transporte y de la movilidad en el mundo. Para ello tenemos a Tae Kim, secretario general del Foro Internacional de Transporte. Mr. Tae Kim, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
The stage is of yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Buenos días a todos. Me siento muy honorado. Voy a hacer una presentación en inglés. So today I will talk about challenges to achieve real sustainable mobility in cities. Every cities have problems, as you know. But before going into the details, I will briefly introduce ITF, International Transport Forum. Spain is one of the valued member countries. We have 63 member countries as of today, and we are waiting for more countries to join, especially from Asia and Latin America. And we are housed in the OECD in Paris, but we have independent decision-making the procedure. And we are the only global body with a mandate for all modes of transport. You have ICAO for aviation and IMO for maritime issues, but we try to combine focusing on multi-modalism and also intermodalism. And every year we produce more than 60 reports, and every report can freely shared, and you can download it from our website, and we try to provide evidence and data analysis. We are not normative, we are not prescriptive, but we try to focus on the reality, and we try to bring more concrete evidence so that we can convince policymakers. And also we organize a summit every year in Germany, and next summit will be organized on 18th to 20th May in Leipzig, Germany, focusing on the theme of transport for inclusive society. So today I would like to share some information about challenges in the cities, and I prepared 7 topics. And the first topic is micromobility, as you see. In fact, these days we see every day new mobility devices, e-scooters, and even strange bicycles, and even something that we didn't really see in the past. But the question is how we can manage the perception and acceptance of those new devices, because it's very rapidly becoming a part of our daily life, but in the end we have to introduce relevant regulations because it should be a part of the whole transport system in cities. And they occupy spaces and they have to respect traffic laws, but sometimes they exist in the dead angle. So we have to introduce relevant regulations on that issues. It's very practical, but sometimes it's very dangerous. And we see sometimes very messy situation that a lot of personal mobility devices are left without really being controlled by the authority. And also public transport and mobility as a service, it's a hot topic, and public transport system, transport community and people usually think that this is a good thing. So sometimes we normatively say this is a good thing and this is the way we should go. But in fact, passing through the pandemic period, we learned that sometimes public transport can be dangerous in terms of the propagation of the virus. So during that period, some governments encouraged people to use private car. So it's quite a contradictory situation compared to previous years. That means that it's time to try our best to upgrade our public transport system. Public transport system should be reliable, safe, and clean, and so on, and convenient, and affordable. So maybe before we talk about the importance of public transport system, we have to think about what elements that we have to add to improve this system. Otherwise, we cannot push people to use public transport system if it's not reliable. And mobility as a service, we can easily imagine a platform. We use cell phone every day, and through this cell phone, and we can connect to different modes of transport. We can connect to different entertainment platform, and so on. So how we make this combination in a more smooth way, that's a great challenge in our society today. And reallocating urban space is really good because we know that environment is very important these days. Last week, we were in Glasgow to talk about climate change issues. So people strongly support using bicycle in cycling, also for health reasons. But the problem is that basically our infrastructure was not designed to accommodate this kind of cyclings and new mobility devices before, because when we make a decision on investment for infrastructure, we usually think about 2 decades and 3 decades, even 100 years, because it requires a huge investment, and it's very expensive. And once we fix the design and concept, it's not easy to change after that. And changing it requires another investment, another consensus. And some people say it's very easy and it's very necessary to change our urban space in the way that it can really incorporate a lot of new devices. But that's not true, because once we want to try to change it, we have to think about reallocation of people. Sometimes we have to build consensus, because it all relates to the public money and taxpayers' influence and discussions and so on and so on. So I think reallocating urban space is necessary, but it should be based on our consensus. In cars and cities, we say we have to reduce the use of private cars. I think that's the majority opinion today. But I think 2 things we have to think about at this stage. One is that, as I mentioned, we have to upgrade our public transport system that can observe the demand, the new demand from passenger side. And otherwise, we cannot really say we should not use our private car. Because if private car gives more benefits, more convenience, and why we should push people to use it without really convincing reasons. So we have to improve our public transport system. And at the same time, we these days talk about autonomous vehicles. So imagine that in 2030s, 2040s, autonomous vehicle becomes a essential part of our daily life. And I guess that at that time, the autonomous vehicle will be like our cell phone. So it's not only the vehicle for moving from one point to another. In that private space, we can enjoy movies, we can enjoy dinner, we can enjoy drink and meeting people, and just looking at the landscape and so on. Then I think the concept of mobility will be totally different at the time from that of today. So we are not sure if there will be more demand or less demand if we have autonomous vehicles on the road. So basically, we have to add more dimensions to our reflection when we talk about transport issues. That's a challenge. And speed limit in cities is really important. It has an impact on the mortality and fatality of people. And the study shows that if we have 50 kilometers per hour speed limit in our society, and 1 out of 2 people can die. But if we reduce the speed up to 30 kilometers per hour, the fatality rates goes down very visibly. So in that sense, in February last year, just before the outbreak of pandemic, there was a high-level, the UN high-level conference in Stockholm related to road safety issues, and all the participants agreed on the necessity of reducing the speed up to 30 kilometers per hour in urban areas. And in reality, many countries followed that guidelines and that declaration today. And accessibility relates to inclusive aspect of mobility, because we have different profiles of our citizens in our society. So some people, like the women and aged people and disabled people, they have some limited access to transport services. And of course, already in the infrastructure side, if you already fixed transport lines, and some people are naturally isolated from that service, the capacity. But we need to think about how we can really expand our transport service to people living in remote area, people living with some difficulty in their life. So in that sense, that also concerns the public transport system, how we can manage this public transport system in the most efficient way and effective way and most inclusive way. And interestingly, next year, the theme of our ITF summit will be transport for inclusive societies. So we will definitely discuss that issue. But these days, especially in Western Europe and North America, we talk more and more about gender issues in transport. And at the beginning, a lot of people asked the question, what is the link between the woman and transport? And we have two issues. So for example, in terms of employment, you know, traditionally in the transport sector, we have more men than women. That means that we can easily become biased. So me, when I was working in the Ministry of Infrastructure in Korea, most of my colleagues were males. So when we design our policies, design our infrastructure, we always thought about the man's need and man's specificity. But nowadays we know that half of our populations are women, and they have special travel patterns and special needs. So we begin to talk about the necessity of having more women in the decision-making procedure. And also in terms of safety and security, women are exposed to more threats. So we discussed that issue in the category of accessibility and inclusion. And congestion is a very tough question, and sometimes it creates a strong regulation in the city center and in a certain area of the city. But I think we should also think about decentralizing the elements in cities and in the country itself, because already we have a concentrated system, and we say people should not use private cars, and then I think it has a limited effect, and we try to redistribute our elements in city so that we can create some the green areas, and we can create some pedestrian areas. So it reflects the historical evolution of every city in different situations. But I think we should also think about the more elements that is linked to that question of congestion. So in fact, those are 7 categories that I prepared for you today with a brief explanation what is the core issues and core questions in each category. But last week I was in Glasgow to discuss much broader perspective of climate change and sustainability in the transport sector. But as you know, in every COP meeting, only Ministry of Environment can participate in the negotiation, and also Ministry of Foreign Affairs, not Ministry of Transport, because we stayed outside of the negotiation table, but knowing that 25% of the CO2 emissions come from transport sector, that we should raise our voice, and we should voice our opinion more clearly. So for the first time in the history of COP, and transport ministers gathered in Glasgow last week, and we talked about the common questions, common problems, and I think that is a great improvement in our initiative for collaborating for the sustainability on the planet. And we have an official transport day in every COP, but we used to have informal ones, but this time, for the second time, it was in Madrid, in fact, in 2019, that the first official transport day was declared. So we continue this rhythm, and we continue this initiative. So we will do our best, and in the transport sector, not only in cities, but also in the country as a whole, we have a lot of the questions and challenges ahead, but we work together to solve many problems, step by step. Tomorrow we cannot get the answer suddenly, but if we start the discussion on a serious way, we can get there. Thank you very much. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much for your presentation. So we have 5 minutes for one more question, and if it's good for you, I want to go deeper with probably with the International Transport Forum is deploying so many activities as a platform for climate change. Can you tell us how this is going?
Yep. That's a very important and interesting question. And in fact, imagine that if one country has a bad air quality, and we do not have a physical boundary in the air, so the air can be diffused to the neighboring countries. That's why we think of this question as global question. That's why we have to work together to solve these problems. And we experience global warming and global climate change issues. But with our 63 member countries, we try to crystallize the evidence, as I mentioned. And we should not ideological, we should not be normative, but we can analyze our reality and provide member countries with evidence and data. Why? Because we are in the mobility sector, but in our daily life, we have our counterparts. We always say we have to transform our ambition into action, but that's not easy, because we have Ministry of Transport, a Ministry of Environment, a Ministry of Finance who gives money, but that's not the end. We have parliamentary people who really give the money, and without money allocation, without financial support, and without consensus, we cannot really make it happen. And especially we have also local government, central government, and private sector and individuals. This all coordinated, the governance can really help to make this situation possible. So in ITF, we focus on concrete reference. And last year in July, during this pandemic period, we launched TCAT, Transport Climate Action Directory. So that contains more than 60 government measures, and each measure provides rough estimation of how much CO2 can be reduced if government can use this measure. So they can choose several options and combine them in a more effective way. And during this COP, we added 20 more. So now on our website, you can have it very clearly. We have 86 government measures. It will be improved step by step. And what is important is that that was endorsed by UNFCCC, organizing COP every year. And there's an official reference for transport community, also environment community, and academics, and so on. So now we can convince people that with this evidence and rough estimation and prediction of CO2 emissions, we can say that we need to do this. But before, in fact, it's a bit blurry and ambiguous. So we are focusing on that.
Thank you. So, Mr. Tae Kim, let me please invite you to the next edition of our Mobility Observatory next year. We will delight if you join us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Continuamos. Continuamos en unos minutos con el cierre de la jornada del observatorio. Muchas gracias.